Mark Levin here. The post-election economy could be a minefield of inflation, massive debt, and currency instability. That's why I count on gold for my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America, and that's who I turn to for my own investments. Call them now, 800-900-8000, for a free gold investment kit, and see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Don't wait and see if post-election chaos destroys your savings. Act preemptively. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Welcome. I begin the program with two questions. As I sit here and contemplate, can you think of any reason why there shouldn't be the requirement for voter identification that you are a citizen when you vote? Can you think of any reason, that you shouldn't have to show a legitimate voter identification? Number two, can you think of any reason why a non-citizen should be permitted to be on a voting list for a state? A non-citizen can be on a voting list for a state, thereby capable of voting. Can you think of any reason to permit that? Well, I want to tell you what's going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it's not just in Virginia, in other states too. Let me give you an example in Virginia. The biggest county in Virginia by far is Fairfax County. It's got well over 1 million people, probably 1.2. It's the biggest county outside of Washington, D.C. It used to be Republican, but now, of course, it's filled with Democrats. And the Fairfax Republican Party put out a release. Today, the Fairfax County Republican Committee condemned the U.S. Department of Justice, listen to this, for interfering in Virginia's voting process by suing Governor Youngkin for fulfilling his role in assuring that only legal citizens were able to vote on November 5th. The Virginia Constitution itself states, quote, each voter shall be a citizen of the United States, unquote. That is a requirement, period. So Governor Youngkin, he issues Executive Order 35 and explains that in the brief 18-month period between January 2022 and July 2024, the Virginia Department of Elections, or what they call elect, removed 6,303 non-citizens from the voter rolls. We are proud that Governor Youngkin is defending the citizens of the Commonwealth by cleaning up our voting rolls, said Katie Gorka. That's right, our buddy Sebastian Gorka's wife, chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Committee. For too long, the DMV did not provide legally mandated data, and the Department of Elections, or elect, did not demand it. So here you have the bureaucracy that didn't follow up, purposely. As a result, non-citizens registered and voted in the past. Governor Youngkin is now simply following the law to ensure that Virginia voters are not disenfranchised. The Department of Justice, the Harris-Biden Department of Justice, has brought a lawsuit in an attempt to thwart this action and push for non-citizens to vote. One more example of the Harris-Biden administration wielding the DOJ for their political purposes. So for more than a decade, Virginia bureaucrats allowed thousands of non-citizens onto Virginia's voter rolls. And from at least 2011 to present day, thousands of non-citizens have been permitted to register to vote in Virginia, enabled by the Department of Motor Vehicles from 2013 to May 2023, 10 years. The DMV did not provide to elect the office that oversees elections the document numbers obtained from legally present non-citizen DMV customers as required by law. These document numbers would have enabled elect to verify the citizenship status of voter registrants via use of systematic alien verification for entitlements program, or SAVE, operated by the DHS. Prior to August, elect also failed to use the SAVE program to verify the citizenship status of both newly registered voters and existing voter registrations, even though elect has had the ability to use the SAVE program since 2014. Using the SAVE program, states and localities can verify easily legally present non-citizen immigrant status and also their naturalization acquired U.S. citizenship status. And elect and general registrars do not verify the Social Security numbers of non-DMV voter registrations with the Social Security Administration. For these registrations, the Social Security numbers are not even checked to ensure the numbers match to the holder's correct name and date of birth. Gorka said, we have hundreds of election workers and poll watchers to help protect the integrity of this election. But there's no way for us to verify if the people voting are actually citizens, because the DMV and the Office of Elect keep that information hidden from the people they claim to serve. That is, the citizens of Virginia. And so this is why Youngkin's actions are so important. But in addition to the Harris-Biden regime lawsuit, two groups, the so-called Virginia Coalition for Immigration Rights and the League of Women Voters of Virginia, are suing to restore non-citizens to the voter rolls and to stop any further removal of non-citizens. So these leftist groups are also using campaign tactics to push non-citizens to register and vote on Election Day. So you hear all the time, where's your evidence of voter fraud? It's right here. It's right here. Now, Governor Youngkin, he was on the Constipated News Network yesterday with Fake Tapper, and I want you to listen to this. It starts with fake, and then it goes to Youngkin. Cut 6, go.
The reason why this quiet period was put into law under the federal law is because these purging programs, I'm not singling out Virginia's, but in general, purging programs are error-filled.
And all right, let's stop a minute. Here's what he gets wrong. If you know that the DMV and this elections office have not been scrutinizing their voter rolls for non-citizens on their voter rolls so they can vote, there's no requirement in the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that you allow fraud to occur, none whatsoever. Quiet period or no quiet period. And so here, there's no question that there's no mistakes. It is affirmatively taking place. Go ahead.
We're not citizens who have since gotten their citizenship, are mistakenly taken off the rolls. Sometimes it's just the same name. Sometimes the government just screws up. And so that's the reason for the 90-day period. Why not just honor that 90-day period?
Well, let me just first begin. It's anything but a purging program. It begins with someone identifying themselves as a non-citizen. And I guess I would posit back to you, do you think that non-citizens, when they've self-identified as a non-citizen, should stay on the voter roll and therefore be in a position to potentially vote in a presidential election?
I don't think
so. Let's stop a minute. So in other words, these forms, citizen, non-citizen, and so forth and so on, these people check off that they're non-citizens. But the DMV and the election office do not take that information to make sure they're not on voting rolls. They're automatically put on these voting rolls. And so this isn't a matter of a mistake. The people themselves are checking non-citizen. Go ahead.
Non-citizens should vote. How are they self-identifying? How does that happen?
They actually tick a box that says, I am a non-citizen, or they do not answer the question that they are a citizen. And therefore, they self-identify that they are not a citizen in the United States of America. And this is why this is so out of bounds in my mind from the Justice Department. They fully understand this. They understand the process starts with a person self-identifying as a non-citizen, and then there is a match with that person's name on the voter rolls, and they are given not just one, but up to 3 times in order to try to cure it. And this is why I find this to be a very, very unreal moment that is stunning, that they filed this suit 25 days before a presidential election, when in fact this has been going on in accordance with our Constitution, the federal Constitution, and state law since 2006.
You understand? These violations have been going on since 2006, and the Department of Justice waits until now to bring this lawsuit. Why? Because it won't be resolved before the election. This is a very diabolical, evil Department of Justice. One more, cut 7, go.
I guess the only thing I would say is, and I'm not here to represent the Justice Department, but 6,300 people is a lot. I don't know that every time everybody checks a box, they know what they're checking. I think a lot of people mess up when they check boxes. And there is this federal law of 90 days. And I just wonder, when you knew this was going on, did you not know that the law was you can't do this within 90 days of an election, or was it just it was just rolling and nobody even thought about it?
No, it actually doesn't contravene the federal law at all. And in fact, because it is done on an individualized basis, person by person, and because that person has in fact self-identified as a non-citizen, this is not subject to the 90-day blackout period, in my view, and in counsel's advice.
So they're not just blowing people off this list. They're looking at individuals who've checked non-citizen. You've checked non-citizen. You have identified yourself as somebody who shouldn't be on the voting lists. The DMV and the so-called elect office, they put them on the voting lists anyway. And so the governor's trying to take them off. The Department of Justice intervenes 25 days before the election, says, no, the 90-day period. And what the governor's saying, this has nothing to do with the 90-day period. We're looking at individuals that check the no citizen box. It's a violation of state constitutional law, federal constitutional law. And the Justice Department says, no. And they did this with another state. So I don't want to hear anymore that there's no voter fraud, because you see the League of Women Voters and this phony ethnic front group, they come in and they sue and challenge it too. They want these people on the rolls. Why? So they vote. They don't want voter ID. Why? So people who don't have a right to vote, vote. What could possibly be, legitimately, another motivation for this? And this is going on in a lot of places. And it's the Democrats who are defending it. It's the Harris-Biden Justice Department. And you might recall a few months ago, I did a story on how Biden signed an executive order that was secret for the longest time, where people are signing up for federal benefits and so forth. They're signing up. That information is being used to put people on voting rolls. And so they're purposely exploiting this throughout the country. And this is why I say you got to vote early. And you got to vote in big numbers. And you got to be the Paul Reveres. You got to be the Thomas Paines. You got to get your friends and everybody else out to take care of this, so we can end this kind of institutionalized voter fraud, is what I call it. Institutionalized voter fraud once and for all. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The upcoming election isn't just about choosing leaders. It's about bracing for the economic fallout that could follow. You know, history shows that post-election periods can bring economic turmoil. But this time, with our national debt skyrocketing and global tensions rising, we could be facing unprecedented risks. We could see runaway inflation or even a currency crisis. That's why I encourage people to diversify and look at gold as a financial safety net. Gold has been said to be a reliable wealth shield for thousands of years through some of the worst economic storms. And for my gold investments, I trust Advantage Gold. They're who I buy from exclusively, and I recommend them to anyone serious about helping to protect their wealth. You can call them right now at 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. You can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be happy you did. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. All right, we're here with our friend Christopher Rufo, who helped break a story about Kamala Harris and her plagiarism. You know, I remember, Chris, years ago, 1987, as you point out, Joe Biden had to drop out of the Democrat presidential primary because he was caught stealing language from Robert Kennedy and Neil Kinnock, the Labour Party leader in Britain. And today, we have media organizations. You bring the story to the American people that she is a big-time plagiarist with her first book. And other than a few spots here and there, pretty much crickets. Isn't that amazing to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing in one sense, but it's not amazing in another. The media has learned its lessons. They aren't honest brokers. They aren't trying to deliver the facts to the people and let them decide. They're trying to maintain a narrative about Kamala Harris that we've seen since her first entry into the campaign, which was basically a full-scale propaganda effort to prop up a historically weak candidate. And the funny thing is, Mark, if you compare the plagiarism by Kamala Harris in her first book with the plagiarism of Joe Biden in his 87, 88 campaign, Kamala Harris's plagiarism is much more egregious, not only because she's copying language, verbatim throughout the text, but she's copying from sources like Wikipedia, which even my middle schooler understands is, beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wikipedia is a joke. All right, so tell us what this expert found overseas. You got this information, and what she did.
Yeah, that's right. So I received a kind of a document and then published it as an exclusive report from a plagiarism hunter in Austria who has developed a reputation over the past decade for terrorizing the German-speaking politicians, digging up plagiarism from their academic careers, and really taking down political leaders in Germany with some stunning successes. And he thought that he was, less equipped to break the story here in the United States. I had broken the story about Claudine Gay's plagiarism when she was president of Harvard University. And so he came to me with this document, which was stunning. There are, a dozen instances of significant plagiarism. She's copying language word for word from unreliable sources. And the whole book is basically riddled with this plagiarism. It's like, intentional. It shows sloppiness. It shows malevolence in some cases. And look, in any other kind of sane and healthy media environment, this would be the top story, not only in conservative media, which it is, but it would be the top story in all media across the United States. Mm-hmm.
And even some conservative media is not really focused on it. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it's made the rounds. Day one, it was a bit of a slow build, but now, we've gotten coverage in virtually every conservative publication. To that said, there are two big publications on the left and center left. The New York Times did a big whitewash. They said that it was plagiarism, but it wasn't bad, and if you noticed it, you were racist, the kind of typical argument from the Times. But to its credit, CNN actually did an analysis of the report and concluded that, yes, in fact, it was plagiarism. They angled the story, making me the villain of the story rather than the plagiarist. But they did acknowledge within the story that, yes, this is plagiarism, yes, it was widespread, and yes, it was significant.
When we come back, Christopher Rufo, what has been the response of Kamala Harris' campaign? Has there been a response? Let's dig into that a little bit. We'll be right back. Folks, we may be standing on the precipice of a post-election economic meltdown. Any election can send shockwaves through our financial system, but this time, the stakes could be higher than ever. Reckless spending, mounting debt, misguided policies has set the stage for potential economic disaster. We can see rapid inflation or even attempts to undermine our currency. That's why I've always relied on diversification and gold for protection. It's been said to be a timeless safeguard against economic chaos, and in these uncertain times, it's more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold exclusively. They're one of the top gold companies in America, and they're who I turn to for my own investments. Call 800-900-8000 right now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help protect you from post-election chaos. You might even qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
So this is a plagiarism scandal. A couple of decades ago, this would have knocked Kamala Harris out of this race. The media would have been shocked. She would have been humiliated. She would have had cameras and microphones in her face demanding an answer. That's what happened to Biden. But those standards, as weak as they were back then, they don't exist at all anymore. You can imagine if this were Donald Trump, you'd never hear the end of it. Just like her husband, Dougie Emhoff, and the things that he's accused of doing. It's as if the Daily Mail never reported them. Why? Because you can have propaganda by censorship. That is, the media not reporting information that is newsworthy because they want a particular result. Now, Christopher Rufo, as I understand it, you attempted to get a comment from them. Others have attempted to get a comment from them, and there's been no response from the Kamala Harris campaign. Is that correct?
Well, initially, yes. The Harris campaign refused to provide us comment as we first broke the story of her plagiarism, but there was actually enough heat coming from left-wing publications, at least covering it, from the CNN reporters and New York Times reporters, and they did eventually release a statement, but the statement was in itself totally false. It said that Kamala Harris had cited her sources and created, footnotes. Of course, she didn't cite her sources. She committed plagiarism, but the bulk of the statement was actually just to attack me. I'm bringing forth the information. I'm the reporter. I established the facts, but really they just went on the attack against me because they want to signal to their allies in the media and such. This is a conservative reporter. We want to destroy his reputation. We want to target him personally as a way of avoiding the actual substance of the report and grappling with this very embarrassing plagiarism crisis.
And it is embarrassing because I want the American people to understand plagiarism is stealing. You're stealing somebody's work product. You have physical labor, you have intellectual labor. You're stealing somebody's thought process, their writings and so forth. It's like stealing anything else. And not only that, Christopher Rufo, she's an attorney. And attorneys are trained to have proper citations, proper footnotes or endnotes when they write briefs and so forth and so on. They're supposed to be meticulous about this. You're taught it in law school, how to write these things. Also, when you're an author, I'm an author. The difference is you and I actually write our books. And so you'll find hundreds of endnotes in my books. And I do that purposely. People deserve credit. That's why. And that's how I've been trained. It's called ethics, whether you're an author, a lawyer, author, or whatever. And so do we know anything about the publisher? I mean, it seems to me they ought to be retracting some of this.
Well, this is actually a very interesting wrinkle. And so my team emailed the publisher requesting comment. And executives at the publishing company accidentally copied us on some of their internal communications. And they were in a full panic. They said that all inquiries about this plagiarism should be routed, to the executives. And, we should try to maintain silence because this is a very sensitive matter. We have to get through this. That was the effect of what they were saying. And so, look, the publishers know they got caught publishing plagiarism. The readers of the report that I packaged know that Kamala Harris committed plagiarism. But we still have this kind of media class that is maintaining this fiction that she is, brilliant, joyous, a scholar of high caliber. It's an utter farce. And the question is, Are the American people going to see through it? Are they going to catch the glimpse of what is really happening beneath the surface of this propaganda campaign when they cast their votes come next month?
You know, Christopher Rufo, I've made the point that she never actually prosecuted a case herself. 8 years in the DA's office, 8 years in the Attorney General's office, because I've looked through all the normal search channels. I don't have time to go to every courtroom and look, but I've challenged the campaign on Fox and behind this microphone. Okay, if she has actually litigated cases, can you cite me them and show me them so I can give her credit where credit's due? Nothing. Not a word. So she's really never prosecuted anything. I brought people forward who had been molested by pedophiles, priests in San Francisco, who said that the prior DA had actually done investigations, had pulled files together, was ready to go. She defeats this prior DA, and then she wants nothing to do with them. She never prosecutes any of these pedophiles. You know, other cities did. And then when she was Attorney General, they asked for the records so they could bring civil suits. She never answered their contacts then. There's a lot about her. 92% turnover on her staff when she's vice president, dropping the F-bomb, screaming at people, telling them not to look into her eyes. I mean, you're 100% right. They've created a fiction here. They have concocted this personality, and they're just desperately trying to drag her across the finish line, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what you're saying really goes to this point that, you know, she has really worked her way up the ladder and leaving behind her a kind of abyss of accomplishment. You don't see actual substantive achievements. Her record as Attorney General is thin. Her record in the United States Senate as far as legislation passed is thin. Her record as Vice President, to the extent that she was participating in the administration, was likewise thin. And so she is a resume, a symbolic political leader who's collected the various identity points, who's collected the various titles, but there's not much substance there. And I think the American people are starting to see this vast chasm between the image or the symbol and the underlying substance. And again, propaganda is difficult to maintain over the long term. The truth has a way of bursting through. The question right now in the closing weeks of this campaign, however, is what will win in the end? Can they maintain the fiction for long enough to get her over the finish line so that the regime behind her can rule over the Oval Office? Or will people see the truth and say, you know, for whatever his faults might be, you know, at least former President Trump is a man who calls the shots for himself and certainly is a man who wants to get substantive things done.
And he loves the country, and she doesn't. She believes in this fundamental transformation. She was basically groomed by Obama. I remember the midterm elections where he got blown out by the Tea Party, but he went all the way to California to campaign for her to become Attorney General. Everybody thought it was very weird. And she's been kind of under his wing from the very start. And you can see Obama trying to salvage her campaign now. But what do you make of the media? I mean, the media attack you. They will try and destroy you. They do it with me. They do it with other people. They do it with Trump and so forth. The media are different than they were 20 or 30 years ago. They may have been liberal, have a liberal bent. They may have been partisan. But this media is completely out of the closet now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, Mark, for my last book, and you were gracious enough to have me on your show about it, I read the New York Times op-eds about some of the left-wing radicalism back in the late 60s and early 70s. And I was actually shocked. The position at the New York Times was very critical of hard left race ideology, Black Panther ideology, whether underground ideology. They relentlessly kind of mocked and criticized those philosophies. Fast forward now 50 years, and those are the philosophies that rule the pages of the New York Times. And if you dissent from those, you know, I consider myself someone on the kind of moderate center right. But for them now, anything left of far left is considered far right. This is the political world that they're creating, that they would like to see. And so it's no surprise that they're going all in to defend Kamala Harris, no matter what her transgressions.
She's lied about her background. She's lying about her position. She picks a running mate who is a serial liar. These two people are pathological. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, I mean, it's stunning. But look, Kamala Harris did not want to pick a vice presidential candidate, or rather, vice presidential nominee who would upstage her in any way. And so she had to define it all the way
she
down
succeeded.
To Tim Walz, who's one of the most bizarre people, even just as far as his mannerisms, his public appearances, his bumbling with words. I mean, it really is stunning and shocking, and it would be a shame if America, the most powerful and still the most free country on earth, would pick people of such little skill, little talent, and little accomplishment.
It is shocking that the greatest nation on the face of the earth, this is the best they can do. And look, it is shocking how she became the nominee. Not a single vote, not a real convention. They had a virtual vote before the convention, no competition, no challenge on the floor, no nothing. They broom Biden out. They disenfranchised 14.5 million primary voters. And they keep smiling and going along like it's no big deal. So she's never received a single vote for a presidential nomination. Not the first time she ran, not this time she ran. So this general election will be the first time she's actually subjecting herself to voters. Isn't this the weirdest damn thing?
It is. And of course, some people just have fortune on their side. They're very lucky. I think that's certainly part of this. But the other part of it is she is a ruthless operator. She'll say and do whatever it takes. She knows that she has some of those symbolic qualities related to race and gender in particular that make her untouchable relative to other candidates. And so she's going to ride this all the way in. And listen, what I think the conclusion is. If she wins, she'll know that she owes it all to the media. And so the relationship between the president and the media will be the relationship to watch. And the question then becomes, in a sense, who controls whom? And I think that it'd be the first totally media-controlled presidency, because Kamala just has to kind of go wherever the media's fashion is indicating. That's the only source of her power. And I actually think that's much more dangerous than even a kind of addled and semi-brain dead president like Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. She's there really as a holder, as a marker, because just like with Biden, they'll pour their ideology through him, or in this case, through her. They'll push their agenda. But she does have some ideological positions, like she's extremely hostile to Israel. She really does not believe that we should have a secure border, that everybody coming across the border. I mean, you've written about it, Latcrit and all these other things that, you know, these white Europeans, they're the illegal aliens and so forth. Obviously, she and others really believe this stuff, right? Or the border wouldn't be wide open the way it is.
Yeah, no, of course she does. But at the same time, she's very willing to switch her positions as she finds political advantage. And so, you know, in a sense, one of the most reassuring elements of her political campaign is that she's adopted all of Donald Trump's positions, because her polling at least is indicating to her that her prior radical positions, probably her most authentic political commitments, are deeply unpopular. And so, again, I think we'd see a bait and switch. She's saying close the border, reduce taxes.
Yeah, but she'll switch back. She's elected.
And all of
matter.
these things, but that would be immediately gone.
Exactly.
If she enters office.
100%. Well, keep up the great work. That was really excellent work. And the gentleman who did the digging, just pass our regards on to him. And it's very, very important to know these things. And I appreciate you, buddy. And you're with the City Journal and the Manhattan Institute. And you can go to chrisrufo.com. Is it ChristopherRufo.com? ChristopherRufo.com. And take care of yourself.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
All right, be well. Isn't that amazing? Blatantly steals people's intellectual property. It's like stealing a physical piece of property. And no big deal. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The upcoming election isn't just about choosing leaders. It's about bracing for the economic fallout that could follow. You know, history shows that post-election periods can bring economic turmoil. But this time, with our national debt skyrocketing and global tensions rising, we could be facing unprecedented risks. We could see runaway inflation or even a currency crisis. That's why I encourage people to diversify. and look at gold as a financial safety net. Gold has been said to be a reliable wealth shield for thousands of years through some of the worst economic storms. And for my gold investments, I trust Advantage Gold. They're who I buy from exclusively, and I recommend them to anyone serious about helping to protect their wealth. You can call them right now at 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. You can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be happy you did. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. You know, folks, I look at this violence issue and democracy issue because they're trying to ramp up now democracy. He wants to be a dictator. He's going to use the military to round people up. They're liars. He never did any of that, and he's never going to do any of that. But here's what's interesting to me. You had the riots of 2020 that went on for months. People literally died. They were killed. Arson in our major cities, starting really in Minneapolis. They burned down a police precinct. The destruction that they did. You had in Portland, the federal courthouse, under attack for 60 straight days. Physical attack. Police beaten and harmed throughout this country. You literally have a candidate for president in Kamala Harris who supported Black Lives Matter. You literally have this guy Biden who made one statement from his basement. You literally have the governor of Minnesota chosen as the running mate by Kamala Harris, who pulled back the National Guard despite the fact the left-wing mayor of Minneapolis begged him to send in the National Guard. Citizens were being harmed, businesses were being destroyed, cops were under attack. You had mayhem, you had anarchy, real violence. But he waited. And so Kamala Harris and Tampon Tim, they're going to tell us about January 6th. January 6th, you heard Trump today was extremely articulate dealing with a real head case, this phony journalist. He kept this cool, kept this temperament. He was just moving from issue to issue. Absolutely brilliant. Kamala Harris couldn't stand that for 10 seconds. And he made the point. He said, look, there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people at that protest. A relative handful of them, 700, 800 of them, whatever. They tried to storm the place. Some of them were waved in, invited in. He said, but they never talk about the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And I said, peacefully. And I offer the National Guard. You know, Kamala Harris can't even say that. Tampon Tim can't even say that. Kamala Harris was busy contributing to a fund that would allow the rioters out, that would pay for their bail. That's what she did. She literally had her hand, if not directly, indirectly in the violence by rewarding the violent individuals, by providing them with money. And proud of it, announcing it. So I want you to think about these things, America. Dictator, and now he's a racist. It's amazing. The party of racism and segregation of slavery. Joe Biden, a racist segregationist. Absolutely 100%. And Kamala Harris once called him out in a debate. Donald Trump has never done anything racist. He's hired black people. He's hired Latinos. He's hired Asian people. He's hired gay people. He's hired all kinds of people, regardless of background or creed or race or religion or anything else. Kamala Harris talks about equity. Kamala Harris puts people, pigeonholes them into groups based on physical features. Just keep your head straight, America, and think these things through for yourself. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. The Democrat Party says that those of us who are going to vote for Donald Trump, we're against democracy. Of course, what they're trying to say is we're against republicanism, but they're too stupid to know the difference. But we get the point. I don't want to destroy the Electoral College, do you? No, they do. I don't want to destroy the independence of the Supreme Court and pack it with a bunch of Politburo types, do you? No, they do. I don't want to eliminate the filibuster rule, even though that's not a constitutional issue, but they want to eliminate it so they can do things that the Constitution prevents. They want to eliminate it. Do you? No, we don't. And I can go on and on and on down the list, ladies and gentlemen. This guy, Jamie Raskin, who's a Marxist-Stalinist just like his daddy. That's right. Chip off the old block. He's already announced that he's not going to accept a Trump electoral victory. It's funny how the media keep asking Republicans, whoever show up, that's the first question out of their mouth. You going to accept the election results? You're going to accept it's the Democrats who are announcing that they won't. But they don't mention that. Do they, Sunday show hosts? No, they don't. Do they, Fake Tapper? No, they don't. Do they, Wolf Blitzed? No, they don't. Do they, Andrea Mitchell? No, they don't. And go down the conga line of the reprobates. But the Democrats have fully announced that they have no intention of accepting the results of this election. In fact, they're working very closely with the unconstitutional special counsel, very special, and that phony, fraudulent Judge Tanya Junkin, I guess it is, Chutkin, sorry, who's ruled in the most bizarre motions in favor of the government, of course, that they will use the filing, listen to this, they'll use the filing by this jackass, by this Jack Smith, as a basis for impeaching Trump if he's elected. So they're all set, ladies and gentlemen, the party of democracy. They have no intention of accepting the results. That's why they have all these non-citizens on our voting rolls and why the Department of Justice tries to give them legal cover. They're so corrupt. So corrupt. But there's more. Now, this may seem a little complicated, but if you stick with me, you'll be able to walk through it. There's a piece by Josh Hammer in The Federalist. I didn't even know this was going on. Democrats are launching a judicial power grab. Now, understand something. If they lose the election, or if they win, but if they lose the election, they're going to move as fast as they can to put scores and scores of regulations and executive orders in place that have as their purpose undermining the election that just took place. That is, to push their agenda, to enshrine their agenda, to make it extremely difficult for the new Trump administration, God willing, should he win, to undo them. Everything from personnel policy and so forth and so on. So they're there right now plotting to sabotage an electoral victory by Donald Trump, to attack his victory, to try and prevent him from being chosen by the House and the Senate after the election, to impeaching him, and to using the bureaucracy to sabotage him. But they're for democracy, America, and if we had a real press, they would tell you this. But you have me, and since almost 30% of the American people turn into me, my show, to find out what's going on in the election, I have an obligation to tell you this. Now, here's this piece by Josh Hammer. Democrats are launching a judicial power grab. Because why? They're totalitarians, that's why. Democrats are trying everything they can to hold on to judicial power in case Trump wins in November. During former President Donald Trump's first term, many left-wing interest groups ran to courts chock full of leftist federal judges in, among other places, California, Hawaii, and Washington State. And because of the Senate's so-called blue slip policy, that's an unwritten rule that allows home state senators to veto district court judicial nominees, there was no real doubt that these groups would draw a judge ideologically similar to them. These district court judges proceeded to issue sweeping injunctions after sweeping injunctions. And various Trump policies were bogged down for years as the Department of Justice appealed. These left-wing groups either stopped or at least significantly stalled many Trump policies. They don't believe in elections. When President Biden assumed office, shrewd Republicans fired off their own litigation shots. Texas firebrand Attorney General Ken Paxton has been particularly successful in procuring injunctions in certain Texas-based federal courts against Biden's myriad overreaches. Furious, leftists are now seeking to thwart Paxton by taking away a tool he has utilized to great effect. Ready? It's called the single judge division. Stay with me. The single judge division. What does all that mean? Well, Congress divides federal district courts by state, district, and division. For instance, the state of Illinois has 3 districts, the northern, southern, and central districts. Within the northern district, there are 2 divisions. The western division, based in the small city of Rockford, and with only 1 active judge, and the much larger eastern division with about 24 active judges in Chicago. Likewise, Texas has several districts, and within each one there are many divisions. One such division is the Amarillo Division of the Northern District of Texas. That division has precisely 1 active judge, Matthew Kacsmaryk. This guy's great, too. Judge Kacsmaryk has enraged leftists with several rulings that have enjoined Biden administration policies. For instance, he ruled that the Food and Drug Administration had approved the abortion fanticide pill, I guess it is, in an unlawful manner. The U.S. Supreme Court ultimately reversed this decision, and Judge Kacsmaryk's ruling never took effect because he had the humility to stay it. Nevertheless, left-wing activists are now attempting to use the Judicial Conference, that is, the supervisory body that essentially acts as the federal judiciary's own deep state, to end the use of single-judge divisions in all cases of injunctions against federal or state governments. Okay, earlier this year, the Judicial Conference issued what's called advisory guidelines to all the nation's district courts, recommending that all cases be randomly assigned throughout the district in which they are filed, regardless of the division that actually receives the filing. Conservatives have protested this thinly veiled ideological power grab. Senate Minority Leader McConnell reminded the Judicial Conference that the legality relevant congressional statute clearly vests district courts with the power to decide how to divvy up their own case assignments, rather than having them randomly assigned. Now, just weeks before a monumental election, leftists have once again ramped up their efforts to ram through a rule in the Rules Committee of this Judicial Conference that make the previously advisory guidance outright mandatory, thus caving to the demands of, among others, Chuck Schumer and the Biden Justice Department. So what he's saying here is you have these different judges in these different districts and then within these divisions. And rather than the courts themselves in these divisions deciding how to divide up the cases, they would be randomly assigned. Why? Because Biden has packed the courts significantly. And if they're randomly assigned, it's less likely that a constitutionalist or a conservative judge will actually get the case. Does that make sense, Mr. Producer? Now, the Judicial Conference purports to locate such authority in the Rules Enabling Act, the 1930s-era statute that authorizes the Judicial Conference to prescribe rules of civil and criminal procedure for the federal judiciary. But Congress, not the judiciary. Now, see that? Let's just wait there. Civil and criminal procedure. What does that have to do with the assignment of cases? Absolutely nothing. So rather than the courts assigning the cases, they want it to be randomly assigned. So when you, let's say you're playing cards, but you have a deck of cards where 2/3 of the cards are red. That is, the red symbols, not the black, like not the clubs and the spades, but the other, the heart and so forth. And so you want to randomly select these cases, you see, because you have 2/3 of 66.7% chance that you'll wind up with the case. Regardless of the election result, it's crucial to flag the left's latest effort to decimate long-standing judicial norms simply because leftists are furious they're not consistently getting their way in the case outcomes. This attempt mirrors Justice Elena Kagan's desperate and ludicrous call for lower federal courts to supervise the Supreme Court when it comes to recusal decisions. Should the Rules Committee adopt this proposal, the Supreme Court needs to put its foot down because the justices have been issuing many decisions that leftists detest. The court in recent years has been subject to numerous high-profile political and physical attacks. Congress can act also and has the leverage to do so. Right now, the Judicial Conference wants the U.S. House to pass 2 separate judge-related bills. One of those bills authorizes about 66 new federal judgeships. The other would extend some temporary judgeships. The House Judiciary Committee should refuse to act on either bill. Jim Jordan, this is important advice, should refuse to act on either bill until the Judicial Conference agrees it will not alter the case assignment process through its deep state committees. And Congress should demand that if the Judicial Conference wants changes to case assignment procedures, it will seek new authorizing legislation so as not to create a conflict. Then it goes on. But the point is this. These people are never happy with tradition. They're never happy with the Constitution, rules, anything of the sort. So this is all under the radar. All under the radar, where they want random selection of cases in these various districts. So the likelihood of an actual constitutionalist getting a case is diminished. Is diminished. Because the way it typically works is, okay, I want to bring a case, and I've got to have standing. That's number one. You go through that process, but it's not difficult to figure it out whether you do or don't. And then number two, you got to decide where you're going to bring it, which jurisdiction. So if there's activity taking place in a specific jurisdiction, and that specific jurisdiction happens to have, let's say, a Trump-appointed judge, well, obviously you're going to go into that court, right, Mr. Producer? But let's say you want to bring the case in that district, but there's all kinds of judges appointed there. Let's say half or 2/3 of them were appointed by Biden and Obama and Clinton. Well, what these people are saying is, well, no matter where you bring that case in that state's district, okay, Northern District, Central District, Southern District, whatever, we're going to have a random selection. Excuse me? That's right. So the likelihood is that you won't get the constitutionalist Trump-appointed judge. That's the bottom line. That's what they're doing. They never give up. They never stop because they don't believe in fair play. They don't believe in due process. They don't believe in the Constitution. Now they're out there telling us Trump is a threat to democracy. Jamie Raskin is not making secret his plan that if Donald Trump wins the election to try and prevent him from being president or trying to impeach him early on. He's not making secret his plan. And we have a law school professor at GWU, George Washington University Law School, and a whole cabal of these people, trying to figure out ways to cripple a Trump presidency. But they're for democracy, don't you know? Oh, yes. Trump is a threat. Trump is a danger. Now, as for the enemy within, that phrase, you know who made that phrase really, really famous? Abraham Lincoln. In a speech he gave, I think it was the Lyceum speech, I think it was 1838. How do I know? Because I looked it up today and I read it. It's one of the great speeches of all time. The enemy within. Jefferson talked about this. He said, if the America is to be destroyed, it'll be from within, meaning the enemy from within. Associate Justice Joseph Story, one of the great legal minds, who wrote some of the great treatises on the law, said the same thing. If America is to fall, it will be from within. Lincoln clearly said it. Reagan said it. Others have said it. So Trump says it. And so Trump, you see, He's threatening to use the military. What Trump was saying is this. It's very simple. And this is common sense. What happened in 2020 was a disaster. What's happened in our streets with the Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinians, the Islamists, the Marxists, destroying some of these universities, attacking synagogues, beating Jews in the streets and so forth and so on. He said, if I have to call out the military, I'm going to call out the military and round these people up. Oh, he's a dictator. That's what they say. These people are dangerous. They are unhinged. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I listened to Trump on tariffs and his economic views and everything. And it reminds me of McKinley, William McKinley. You know, Rove, I believe, wrote a book about McKinley. I never read it. I try to read original documents and books, but that said, so he should understand better than anybody else where Trump's mindset is, whether you agree with it or not. And I want to take a little bit of time after the bottom of the hour to give you sort of a brief background about William McKinley. Was assassinated in 1901, unfortunately. So there is that. But he oversaw rapid economic growth after a deep depression. And he ran against pretty much a socialist back in the day. And he won the presidency. But before that, he was a congressman from Ohio. He was a successful governor. And I want to get into a little bit of his background and also get into some of his economic policies. I don't personally believe in across-the-board tariffs. I do believe in tariffs for our enemies. I do believe in tariffs who are to countries that are trying to destroy our industries, and so did Reagan. Reagan put significant tariffs on the Japanese who were destroying our television industry, our electronics industry, and he warned them. And we never had a more free market-oriented president than Ronald Reagan, perhaps Coolidge, but certainly Reagan. And he said, I'm not doing these tariffs because I believe in tariffs. I'm doing it to protect our industries from what the Japanese are doing. And so Trump says that with the Chinese. He says with the Canadians when it comes to dairy, the Mexicans when it comes to automobiles. So they really are in many ways of a similar breed. And Trump talks about using tariffs to threaten these countries. But I want to get into a little bit of William McKinley so you can see what I'm talking about here. I'll be right back. The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk.
Blasting conservative fire. The Mark Levin Show. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
You got that right. 6 years ago today, my father passed away. I think about him and my mother at least 50 times a day. And whatever I am is due to them. Whatever I am is due to them. So if you hate me or angry with me, you love me, you like me, it's due to my parents who did everything they could. Very modest upbringing. You know, it's very interesting. My parents never worked for the government. They never had a steady paycheck. They ran their own small businesses. I mean small. They started a nursery school and a day camp. I don't even know if you could do that today. Then they sold that, not for very much. We were little kids. They raised us in the same building where they would have the nursery school kids go. My father would take the station wagon, get up 5:30 in the morning for the camp kids, and the counselors all had to be able to drive, and they would bring the kids to camp and bring them home at night. He'd get home about 6:30 at night. But I remember as a treat when one of my brothers would go with him, he would take us for a donut at a place, and in the evening, if we went with him, for like a Dairy Queen custard or something. Good memories. Take us out to the golf range. My mother and her mother would make the lunch for the camp kids. I especially love the peanut butter and jelly. I love it today on white bread. But it might be salami, bologna, spaghetti. God, did they work hard. And so they sold it all. It was on about 2 acres of land in a place called Erdenheim, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia in Springfield Township. And every weekend, my father would go there and he'd cut the lawn with a push mower, the whole lawn. And in the summer before camp started, he would scrape and then repaint the pools. He did everything. He built most of the, in the area recess, the playground area, he built most of the things there, with his own 2 hands. And then they opened a small, very small store on Old York Road. People in Philadelphia know what I'm talking about, in Jenkintown. I remember it, 13 and a half Old York Road, because it was a small place. A retail store. I'm telling you this for a reason. And I remember as kids, we would go there on the weekend, and there was an aquarium store we used to go and buy, guppies and stuff. a hamburger place I really loved called the Toddle House. I don't know if there's any Toddle Houses left, but they were the best hamburgers. And then eventually they got a little bigger store. When there was a recession, there was a bad recession in the 70s, people didn't buy because they didn't need to. You don't have to buy furniture or knickknacks and stuff like that. When there's a recession, people pull back. They didn't have any guaranteed income. They didn't have any guaranteed pension. They had to get their own private insurance, health insurance. Nothing was guaranteed to them. They worked for everything. And I can tell when there were bad months and bad years. They were very proud. They never said anything, ever. We never went without. But we didn't live in luxury. But we just were a great family. And I remember them, those days. I am telling you this because when I listen to people today, we're going to go on strike because we want a 77% salary increase over 6 years. Or we're going to go on strike, a players' union, because we want a $45 million salary. Or even the teachers' unions. We're going to go on strike because we're not paid enough. This was completely foreign to my parents and to my family. Completely foreign. I listen to Kamala Harris. I'm going to give $50,000 for this and $25,000 for that, and we're going to do this, $100,000 for that, and $1 million loan. You don't have to pay it back, or you can take out student loans. You don't have to pay the. This would repulse my parents. Repulse them. My dad grew up in abject poverty in North Philadelphia. Poverty, dirt, poor. When he was a kid, when he came back from school, he would walk a mile down the street and join his mother working in Philadelphia in a cigar factory. He worked there till midnight to help his family. My mother came from a little better, but not much. She and her sister were raised by a single mother. No, they had a father, but he left. We got to know him later, but he left. And her mother didn't have a college degree. And she worked odd jobs eventually. She would rent out and acquire over the years her own bar. And by bar, I don't mean one of these slimy bars. I mean a decent small place. I remember all these things. And so when I hear Kamala Harris said, I was raised in a middle-class neighborhood. No, she wasn't. 2 tenured professors, one of whom was a Marxist. She has no idea, personally, what it's like to struggle. None. None. My parents encouraged us to do well in school, encouraged us when we were interested in sports, always encouraged us. And they had it tough. They certainly did. And they were so proud of the fact when I started radio in WABC in New York, they were so proud of their son. And on Fox, my God, when I went on Fox, they were so excited. They'd call me after every radio show, my dad and mom. They'd call me after my Fox shows. They were so excited. That's their boy. Couldn't believe it. That's their boy. And so that's the kind of father and mother I had. He was 93. He lived a long life. He died very, very painfully. It upsets me to this day. So did my mother. Both got cancer. But his cancer was brutal. 6 years ago today, 6:35 a.m. in the morning. I remember it. That's why at the end of the week, I mention those who I remember and who I love. First, our dogs. Always grew up with dogs. And then family members. It's important to remember. I won't be here forever. I won't be behind this microphone forever by hook or by crook. There are people who want to take me out, and God knows. I don't know how long I have on this earth. Nobody does. To this day, I try and follow the ethics and the morals that my parents taught us. Try to be good to my family. Try to provide for what they need. I try to defend my country. Because I know the enemy within is trying to destroy this country. My parents were great patriots. Weren't billionaires or millionaires, nothing even close to that. But they loved this country. If they saw what was happening to it today, with Biden, with Harris, with Waltz, oh my God, if they saw what was going on in the streets since October 7th, with the Jew hatred, and what's going on in Israel, and Biden threatening Israel to hold off arms, I don't know what they'd think. I don't know what they'd think. It's very interesting. Early on, when Donald Trump decided to run, and Ted Cruz and some others, early on I had backed Cruz. Why? Because I knew him for 20 years. Know anything about Donald Trump. But unlike others, I didn't viciously attack Donald Trump either. In fact, he would call me from time to time and we would talk. He understood. I understood. And when Ted lost the nomination, I immediately backed Donald Trump. And have every day since. But it's interesting. There's really three people in our family that backed Trump from day one. My brother-in-law, Joe, who passed about 3 years ago, great patriot. My daughter, Lauren. And my father, Jack. One day when I was on radio, I said I never really trashed Trump, but I was critical of him. I remember he called me afterwards. He loved Cruz, too, by the way. He said, why don't you get off his ass? So I did. I remember that. Remember that day. Anyway, I'm telling you these things because this is a wonderful country. Tremendous people have come before us, family members, others, who've worked so hard so we could have the best country on the face of the earth. And that's what this election's about. Are we really going to give this up? Do we really, you people out there, do you really hate Donald Trump more than you love our country? Because if you vote for Kamala Harris because you can't make up your mind or you don't like Donald Trump's looks or whatever, that tells me you hate Donald Trump more than you love your country. I want you to think about this country and the real history of this country. I want you to think about it. There will never be another place like the United States of America. There will never be another place like the United States of America, ever. If we lose it, it's lost for good, and 1,000 years from now, people will wonder, who the hell gave up a country like this? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. By the way, I want to thank you, folks. Life, Liberty, and Levin on Saturday and Sunday. Record-breaking numbers. Record-breaking. When you consider there were a slew of college football games at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. And Sunday night, we were up against the Dodgers versus the Mets in their first game, as well as Sunday Night Football. We had a huge number. We won the night. I mean, I want to thank you, folks. You're the ones doing this, not me. You're the ones doing this. We work very hard. I work on these monologues very, very hard. I get up early in the morning in order to do the research and all. I don't read them off teleprompters, as you know. But I just want to thank you. I've always told you, when you get tired of it, numbers go down, I'll get out of it. But so far, the numbers are going up, up, up. It's like this time slot on radio. This time slot, I'm the one up against the Mets and the Dodgers constantly, or the Yankees and so forth. This 6 to 9 p.m. time slot in major cities on the East Coast, they consider that the death slot, but not here. Not on this syndicated program. We've been doing it a long time. Well, the economy really sucks. You know this. Don't let them pretend otherwise. And she doesn't have an answer for anything. She wants to spend more money, more debt, more inflation, higher interest rates, 25,000 over here, 50,000 over there. That's not how you create an economy. This isn't the old Soviet Union. This isn't Xi's China. You unleash we, the American people, the little businesses all over the country. That's how you do it. Oh, I didn't tell my McKinley story, did I, Mr. Producer? When we come back, that's right, William McKinley and the similarities with Trump. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, Republican Party goes through changes over the history of its existence. Conservative movement has too. I mean, Taft. Taft was president. Tariffs were all, and not when he was president. I'm talking about his son, the Senator Taft from Ohio. Tariffs were all the thing. I'm not a tariff guy. But I've always said, since I've been behind this microphone, I support tariffs against our enemies. I support export controls against our enemies. I'm not a libertarian who doesn't understand that there are enemies out there, and you don't necessarily trade with your enemies, and you certainly don't provide them with technological and economic advantages. So I support export controls, especially against countries that will use them against us, or countries that are unreliable and will sell them against countries that will use them against us. You're insane if you don't. And yes, I support tariffs against countries that are trying to destroy our industries, especially communist China and so forth. But, you know, one of the things we do not say when it comes to tariffs that the president and others, President don't say, is, wait a minute, you're complaining about tariffs, you're the one subsidizing communist China. Your whole electrical vehicle extravaganza, which is costing us hundreds of billions of dollars in lost money, forcing people to buy these vehicles. 85% of what goes into that vehicle is controlled by Communist China. So they're making a fortune off this. Our auto industry is getting killed. The consumer's getting killed. And so we can have electric cars if people want them, but you shouldn't force them down people's throats. Since when do we do that? You must buy this. That's fascism. That's Marxism. No. You must buy this. No choices. But my point is, they talk about tariffs are going to increase the prices. Now, coming from the left, this is amazing. Their taxes do, their regulations do. Nothing they do is on the cheap. But I was talking about changes in the Republican Party. You hear that helicopter on the air, Mr. Producer? I'm on the Potomac River. So every now and then we get these helicopters. Sometimes they're military helicopters. Sometimes they're presidential helicopters. That's what you hear. Anyway, so the point is this. William McKinley was a member of the House of Representatives from Ohio. He actually served in the Civil War and fought valiantly in the Civil War. And he was the last president, by the way, to have ever served in the Civil War. But in any event, he's in the House of Representatives for a period of time, and he becomes an expert on what? Tariffs. Because he believes that tariffs, if used properly, can create prosperity in the United States. That's his theory. Now, there have been tariffs before he was a member of Congress. There have been tariffs in the past, but nonetheless. Then he goes home to Ohio. He runs for governor. He wins 2 terms as governor. He's a very successful governor. And he decides to run for president. This is William McKinley. Now, when he was governor, he was sort of two minds. He was sort of a populist. He was pro-business, but he was also pro-labor. They didn't really have unions back then, although they were starting to kick in a little ways locally. And so he was of either two minds, you might say, with respect to commerce in America. And it was an industrial period, but there was a terrible, terrible depression that was taking place. Terrible depression. And he's running for president against William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan was a Democrat, but he was what we would call today a socialist. A socialist populist. So he defeats Bryan. He defeats the Democrats. And among other things, he decides, well, we're going to run this economy a little differently. And so he gets into these trade agreements with different countries. And if they won't enter into these bilateral trade agreements, not these overarching trade agreements, then he was going to impose tariffs on some of these countries. His thinking, like Trump's, was, look, we need to build our industries. We need to protect our industries. The economy is dying. People are out of work. And we need to enter into agreements with these different countries so that we can have some kind of a fair trade and commercial system with them. And if these countries don't want to do that, then we will impose tariffs. And he did that. Not all over the place, not across the board, but significantly. Now, what's interesting is the country pulled out of this terrible depression, and there was great economic growth, significant economic growth. Significant economic growth. Then in 1901, he was assassinated by an anarchist, which brought us Teddy Roosevelt, who was selected to be vice president because they wanted to get him out of New York. He was governor there and give him a do-nothing job as vice president. Well, the rest is history. Now, that was McKinley in a nutshell. When we had the Great Depression, which started under Hoover and stretched for 10 years under FDR because of his policies. FDR put in place tariffs too. Now, in that case, that extended the Depression. His regulations, he would create these economic trusts, these brain trusts in Washington that would control different industries. I mean, it was as socialistic as any socialist society could be. And this is where Bernie Sanders' head is and Barack Obama's head is. And, of course, there were more violations and destruction of the Constitution under that presidency than any other time. That's their great hero, FDR. Also an anti-Semite. Also no friend of black people, that's for sure. Wouldn't sign the federal anti-lynching law. Never met with black groups. I can go on, but we have to do a whole semester, as we used to say in college. So tariffs were used then, and they created a tremendous economic disadvantage and a lot of problems for our country. Ronald Reagan, probably the greatest of the free marketeers, he instituted tariffs. I'm doing this off the top of my head, I believe twice. Once to save Harley Davidson. And I remember the speech he gave about how he's for free markets and so forth, but the Japanese were underselling with their motorcycles, Yamahas and so forth. Their government was subsidizing their companies to undersell our market. And Reagan warned them, and they kept doing it. So he put tariffs on their motorcycles being shipped into our country to save Harley Davidson. He also put tariffs on the Japanese because they were doing the same to our electronics industry. Most televisions aren't made in the United States anymore. Most computers aren't made in the United States anymore. Some are, some aren't. But in any event, he saw it, and he warned the Japanese, and then he put tariffs on that too. He was attacked by libertarians and so forth. But he wasn't using tariffs as a matter of economic ideology. He was using it against countries that were subsidizing their industries or blocking our industries. And he said, wait a minute, we can't have governments around the world who are using their governmental power to destroy or crush our industries while they build up their own industries on our dollar. And I don't disagree with that. Never have. So I start from the premise as anti-tariff, and then we build to make the case against a communist China or against a Canada that is underselling our dairy products purposely to destroy our dairy farmers or things of that sort. But I must tell you, as I looked this up and did some research over the weekend on my little iPhone, we subsidize a lot of industries too. We subsidize a lot of industries. Mushrooms, sugar, I could go on and on and on. I have a whole list of them. So we don't have clean hands across the board. So every government, to some extent, decides what industries or what businesses or what areas of life they're going to subsidize or protect or so forth. So just so you know, that's a given. But when another country is an enemy country that's trying to destroy your steel industry so that you can't make tanks or something of that sort, or trying to destroy your computer industry, that's different. That's economic warfare. And then you have countries that are just enemy countries. There's no reason to treat them fairly because they want to destroy you. And so tariffs aren't something that should be used foolishly. They're not something that should be used as a first option. But when you're dealing with enemy countries, or you're dealing with supposedly friendly countries that are influenced by their own industries and special interests to basically kneecap our industries so they can survive, that's not capitalism. That's not market economics. And so you need to respond to that. That's all Trump is saying. That's all he's saying. when massive car factories are built right across the border with Mexico for the purpose of building cars for the United States market and ship them across the border to undermine the American auto industry and our auto workers, that's not right. A strategic decision was made by Mexico and other countries who work with Mexico to basically undersell the market. To cripple our market. And so Trump says, no, we're not going to do that. So you can think of McKinley in some respects, not as much as Trump, some respects Reagan. But I think if you examine this not from a black and white perspective or even an ideological perspective, but yes, even a free market perspective, it's not like we want to hit tariffs on everybody because we want to use our government in order to crush everybody else. That's not right either. That's not right either. But in case of enemy countries, in case of countries that are trying to destroy or undermine certain of our industries, and they're not doing it in a competitive way, they're doing it with the iron fist of their government behind them, we shouldn't have to put up with that. We shouldn't have to put up with that. And I am not abandoning my market economics perspective, which I believe in very, very strongly. I'm talking about certain players, enemies and others, who don't believe in the market system. In fact, on the contrary, they don't believe in a market system. They believe in destroying our market system. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
There's more evidence that the economy sucks. Not that you need it, but you're hearing $1 billion in propaganda and lies and multi-billions more from the media about how well the economy's doing. But you're not doing that well, so the economy's not doing well. There's really two economies, one for Washington and one for the rest of the country. Here at Breitbart, Biden-Harris economy, Walgreens to shutter 1,200 stores to help stem losses. That is a massive number of stores that they're shutting down. All the people are going to be unemployed, all the inconvenience for you folks. National drugstore giant Walgreens will close some 1,200 locations over the next 3 years as it seeks to stem a $3 billion quarterly loss across its businesses, generated by, quote, a sluggish U.S. economy. The company forecast of about 500 stores closure will come in the current fiscal year and should immediately support adjusted earnings and free cash flow, AP reports. They haven't announced where the stores are going to shut yet. At first blush, the forecast looks better than the worst-case scenario, said some experts, adding Walgreens continues to be buffeted by macro challenges that did not abate in the quarter, the economy. As a result of recent headwinds, Walgreens stock is trading near 30-year lows and down 65% this year, making it the worst performer on the S&P 500 index. The closures were announced in June, but the company had not disclosed the number of affected stores at the time. 1,200 Walgreens stores. They had over 8,000 stores as of August 31. Well, that's going to come to an end, at least a certain number of them, a significant number of them. Now, if the economy was chugging along, this wouldn't be happening. They'd be expanding. I don't see anything really expanding. A few things here and there. I really don't. Price of eggs. You know what the price of a dozen eggs are, Mr. Producer? Seriously, do you go out and buy stuff? $6. $6. It's 50 cents an egg. Yeah, $3, $2.95. I mean, I can see it going up a little bit, but under Biden, it's doubled. I mean, you can go through butter, Butter's way up. I mean, basic stuff. You know, it's funny when they say inflation is not too bad, but when they actually add in what people need, certain basic foods and energy and clothing, housing costs, inflation is way up. It's way, way up. You've got to go with what you see, what you hear, what you know, what you're living, your lifestyle. You've got to go with that when you vote. And I want to tell you something right now, and I'm going to do this every evening. Virtually every state in the union, bar I think 3, has early voting right now. Has early voting right now, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
Did you vote yet?
Not yet, but I plan to.
Okay, you're going to vote when?
As soon as I can.
Like tomorrow?
Are they open? Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Mike's my buddy of how many years?
25 years?
25 years? That's all?
25 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
You don't look a day over 22. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
Mike's voting tomorrow. My wife voted today. My mother-in-law is voting, what's today? Tomorrow. Vote early. That's Virginia and New Jersey. They're voting early. Okay? We got to do this, folks. I'll be right back.
Nobody says it better than Mark Levin.
I'll go with what Mark Levin said, because nobody could say it better.
Call in now at 877-381-3811.
So President Trump was at this Chicago Economic Club. There's some kind of Brit, I guess. Nasty dude. I mean, it's like he just keeps asking negative questions, attacking, and it went on for maybe it was 90 minutes. I don't know, at least an hour. I watched the whole thing. I was intrigued, and I'm going to tell you. When it was done, I posted something, and I said something to the effect, you know what? That guy was spectacularly obnoxious. And yet, Trump had a cool temperament. He had a good sense of humor. He answered every question. It was very substantive. The guy would interrupt him. He said, no, I have to finish the point. Because Trump likes to not just spew facts, but he likes to put it in context and provide a story around it. And I said, it's really sharp. I mean, really substantive when you listen to him and how he thinks and how he answers all these questions. He's a smart man. And then you think, Kamala Harris could never do this. No way in hell. And the guy got into politics, and his name is John Mickelchwat or something here, Mr. Producer. He got into January 6th. No, I know, I'm kidding. He got into January 6th like they always do. Cut one, go.
Only 3 weeks to go to the election. Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
You see, now I just want to stop there. Everyone asked this, but they never asked this of the Democrats. Hillary Clinton, who never accepted her loss. Stacey Abrams never accepted her loss. Al Gore never accepted his loss. Joe Biden never accepted Al Gore's loss. I mean, you go on and on. The Democrats never accept a loss, ever. And you got this Stalinist, Jamie Raskin, who already says they're not going to accept the Trump win. So shouldn't the question be better asked of them? Go ahead.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful... Come on, President Trump. You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela, but it was by far the worst transfer of power for a long time.
So let's stop here for a moment, because this guy is illiterate when it comes to our system. He's talking about January 6th. January 6th had nothing to do with the transfer of power. The transfer of power takes place with the oath of the incoming president. Then you literally transfer power, because the president, the incumbent president's president until noon, January 20th. So what he really means is the count. But anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because this is what they like to do. This is what they like to do.
The question, President Trump, is would you respect the decision?
When I found out about this interview, I did a little check. He's a man that has not been a big Trump fan over the years. So I had a choice. Do I do this interview or not? I'm glad I did it. But do I do this interview or do I disappoint a lot of people? Because I know a lot of people in the audience. but his view is very different than mine. Let me just say.
I'm asking you a question, Trustro.
We had a term, peacefully and patriotically. These were people. If you think an election is crooked, and I do, 100%, if you think the day it comes when you can't protest, you take a look at the Democrats. They protested 2016. They're still protesting it. Nobody talks about them. But if we protest, we want to have honest elections.
And it's a true point. No, I don't defend the violence and the people who were violent attacking cops, and I never will. I don't care who they are. That's not my point. The other party is born out of violence. The other party is born to defend slavery, born to tear this country apart, the 1850s and 60s, born, this party, Democrat Party, to be racist and anti-Semitic, born, and I don't mean so far ago, all the way up to almost modern times. All these laws, these civil rights laws, were passed to control the Democrat Party and their politicians. Now they've moved from the racist, anti-Semitic bigots to the Marxist Islamists. But they never embrace the Constitution. They never embrace Americanism. They never embrace capitalism. Fundamental transformation, Obama says. By the way, so did Biden repeatedly, as I wrote in my last book. He says it all the time. So does Michelle. So does Kamala. Fundamental transformation of what? The Constitution doesn't give you the authority to fundamentally transfer of anything. Anything. Where's that coming from? Let's go to cut 2. Go.
Let's return to one other big subject you bring up repeatedly, immigration.
Yeah.
I know it's a very emotive issue for you, but just from the point of view of business people here, you look at the full effect of taking a lot of people out of the workforce, removing a lot of people. The Congressional Budget Office is banking on the fact.
Tell me, how many people who've come into this country illegally in the last 3.5 years are in the workforce? I'm just curious. And what does that have to do with anything if you're here illegally? You're in the workforce. So what? Trump has always supported immigration, legal immigration. He says it over and over and over. Why don't they listen to what he says? Go ahead.
Dollars added to the GDP of America over the next 10 years by immigrants. You want to stop that process. For all the people who run businesses in the audience, I'm just focusing on the economic thing. Are you prepared?
The latest numbers come out. We will this fiscal year, $150 billion for illegal immigration. And how about the human tragedies? The women sold into sex slavery, the children, 325,000 of them missing. How about that? They never talk about the downside of all this, which is enormous, immense. Go ahead.
Slightly smaller economy in exchange for having the immigration controls you want.
Simple answer. I want a lot of people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to have murder.
But that means...
That has to be the 10,000th time that he said that. But they don't want to accept it. See, he's already interrupting him, trying to pop in the next punch. Go ahead.
That means you will have to deport. You know, you are talking about deporting 11 million people. That is a lot of people to take out.
It came out last week that 425,000 people are horrible criminals at the highest level. But it came out that...
So what's the alternative, folks? 425,000 of them are criminals. Just let them stay? Is that it? So they destroy our way of life? Harm our families? I mean, I don't understand. They create these red lines, these boogeymen. You're going to deport these people? Yes. And he said, what else has he said? We're going to start with the most hardened criminals, the easiest of the bunch, and work our way through. Now, Eisenhower did this in the 1950s. Eisenhower did it. And by the way, although you're going to use the military, he used the military. He put out an order to the United States military to round up the people, over 1 million, and they were all deported within 6 months. Just so you know, they love Eisenhower. He's a very moderate Republican. Just the way they love FDR. Remember him? He rounded up 130,000 Japanese Americans and Americans of Japanese descent. He sent them to concentration camps, 10 of them, in the interior of the country. But we love our FDR, we love Ike. But Trump is Hitler. Go ahead.
99 were let in during their administration. They tried to say it longer. Wrong. Over the last 3.5 years, 13,000 plus people came in, murderers. They're in jail for murder. Some were having the death penalty. They were all released into our country. 13,099 people were released into our country. We had drug dealers released. We had street gangs released. Look at what's happening in Aurora. But now I don't have to go with Aurora anymore. Look at what happened last night in Times Square, where rough migrants from all over the place. You know, it's not just South America. We have people coming in from the Congo, large numbers from the Congo and Africa.
He's talking common sense. Yes, people are going to be deported because they're not supposed to be here. We don't know who they are. I mean, it should be Biden and Harris who are blamed, not Trump. What are you blaming Trump for? He's having to deal with what they did. I want to try this one more time to all my friends at Fox, who I love. The hosts, the news reporters, the panelists, please pay attention. This is my 100th time. When Kamala Harris says, most of you know this, that Donald Trump blocked the bipartisan immigration bill. Let's just address this little piece of it so it's not too complicated. She's a liar. 6 Democrats voted against that bill. That bill could never pass. 6 Democrats voted against that bill. 6. Bernie Sanders, Padilla of California, Menendez, Markey, Warren, Cory Booker, and one other who escapes my mind right now. 6 Democrats. So when she says, and Clinton says, and the rest of them say, and the media say, well, we could have had a secure border, but for the fact that Trump blocked it. Did Trump call Bernie Sanders in time to vote now? So it's a lie. It's a myth. Everything about this woman and her campaign, and the media know what I'm saying is true. In addition to the fact, it wasn't a border bill. It was an amnesty bill. It would have enshrined all the issues that Biden has created, and then some. And then some. But at least get this part right, my fellow colleagues and my friends over at Mediaite. But what a sleazy operation that is. Dan Abrams, you should be ashamed of yourself, boy. I'll tell you what. At least tell the truth. The last vote in May 2022, 6 Democrats voted against the bill because it didn't go far enough as far as they were concerned in terms of allowing illegal immigrants into the country. You did a whole monologue on this Sunday night on Fox. I've done it on Blaze. I've done it on Fox 2-3 times. Blaze 2-3 times. Behind this microphone at least 2 or 3 times. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, does this bother enough people who are on the fence to vote against Harris and Biden? Breitbart, youth sex trafficking and its myriad cruelties tripled under President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, according to a report by thefreepress.com. Tripled. Sex trafficking of minors. Thefreepress.com describes some of the harms inflicted on youth migrants under the lax policies set by Biden's border chief, Alejandro Mayorkas. Sex trafficking victims often suffer horrific abuse, as I discovered when I spoke to Landon Dickinson, the 36-year-old executive director for Bob's House of Hope in Denton, Texas, the only shelter for male sex trafficking victims age 18 and up in the country. He says they've seen teens from Central and South America who've been so tortured by their traffickers they can barely function. This is what happens when you have open borders, America. Dickinson described caring for teens who have brain damage from being so heavily drugged, teens who have had their fingernails pulled out, lemon juice poured on wounds. When I asked to interview one of their migrant residents, Dickinson said they simply weren't in any condition to speak to anyone, much less a reporter. We think the cartels and gangs use torture as a control method for the males. They're not going to fight back if they chain their victims to a radiator, beat them up frequently, or drug them. The abuse and prostitution may be forced on young migrants who are indebted to smugglers and their affiliated trafficking gangs in the United States. I don't know. I talk about it almost every other or every third weekend on Fox. I talk about it every week behind this microphone. There's sex trafficking going on the border of women and children, the abuse, and it's like in one ear and out the other. It's just shocking to me. The rising number of youth sex trafficking cases were posted at the Department of Health and Human Services when the Free Press demanded the data under the Freedom of Information Act. The agency is responsible for checking and issuing certification and eligibility letters to the children and youths who first request aid after escaping sex traffickers. It's just sickening. We've got to remove this administration, America. We've got to remove it. Is the program already over, Mr. Producer? Oh, my goodness. When you look around the country, when you see all these things are going wrong, that the country's unraveling, it's time to boot these people and bring in Trump and his people. Please vote early. Please vote tomorrow if you can, tomorrow. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Israel. I know they're blackmailing you now. I know they are. And you, the American people, God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.